Hello, everybody. Welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast number 407, recorded live Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. This is episode 407, Shane. I've already said that once. We're looking at our HTTP things. This week's theme will be proxy authentication required. So we will try to work that in however we can. Proxy authentication required.
Well, so I'm not trying to work it in, but proxy servers, right? So my very first corporate job, this is just flat out talking about proxy servers now. We had a proxy server, right? Good old proxy server 2.0.
Loved it. I'm certified in that, by the way. So if you need any help, let me know.
That's and that was what mid
98.
Yeah, 98. Yeah, that's about the number I was going for. So clearly it wasn't a 98 if we both came up with the same number. But back then I kind of got it. Okay, didn't need this thing. We got to do it because technology was really bad.
Yeah.
But then every now and then, now here in 2018, I run into a customer who's like, "Yeah, we're having this problem because we have a proxy server." And I'm like, "Huh? Yeah, we got." I'm like, "Why?" I don't know. Proxy authentication required has nothing to do with this conversation. It's just in this day and age, someone puts a proxy server up. It just makes my heart hurt because it breaks everything about trying to get to the internet for things like SharePoint servers, trying to install patches and prerequisite installer, and it just, bleh.
Yeah, back in the day, I remember because of how the internet connections were back then, proxy servers and caching and all the stuff they did had huge value. I mean, that made, so I remember just playing around with it. It was part of IIS and I liked it and took the exam on it, passed the exam. And I was working for a consulting company, and I remember putting on like a lunch and learn about it and trying to show it to people and explain it to salespeople. And they were they had no idea. Like it was black magic, and it was black magic they didn't understand, didn't know why they would ever want it. It was like I was talking to a room full of dogs. It's like they just had no idea.
Well, think about it. My proxy server was in front of an ISDN, right? 128K line was all we needed to get the internet. Then at some point, a couple years into that, we got Sprint dropped us a cable modem, like one of the first iterations of like a cable modem style thing, and we were getting 1.5 megs, but we weren't sure about the stability of that, so we kept all the users on the ISDN, and just us at IT used 1.5 megs.
Yep. So I just looked up my Microsoft transcript. I became certified in implementing and supporting Microsoft Proxy Server 2.0 on June 3rd, 1998. So 20 years ago. And when we did it, we had one of those satellite connections because we couldn't get, so it was one of those asynchronous satellite deals. It's
right. And for those of you that didn't nerd out in that period, right, one of the great things about those was, right, because as Todd said, they were asynchronous, right? And if you think about satellite, little dish network type of thing sitting on the roof of your office building, it can only go and retrieve data, right? It can't send. So you had to have a phone line that said, "Hey, I need this web page." So it went over the phone line, and then the server said, "Oh, Todd needs this web page," and then it beamed it back down to the satellite. It was this crazy, just pretty. It could be kind of fast for the time, once you start streaming something, but sending things out it was weird.
Yeah, it was. It was what we had though. Anyway, so that is the theme for this week, proxy authentication required. For the show notes, we're all caught up. Last week I was behind. I cranked out not one, but two podcasts last Wednesday or Thursday. I was a podcast producing machine, so we are all caught up.
Man, so hopefully now that you're all caught up, that you can have a good weekend. That was probably your goal of getting all caught up, right?
I had a big weekend. Yep. So for those of you that aren't following me, I guess I didn't put anything on Twitter or anything, but I ran a marathon this weekend, and it's my second one. I ran the same one last year. Didn't do bad. Ran in 3:52 last year. Had big plans this year of improving my score. Last year I didn't know what I was doing, but this year I planned, I trained, all that. And my goal this year was to finish in 3:45.
Okay.
So like any good marathon, they had a pace group, and most people tell you when you run a marathon, if you're not very diligent, you'll start off too fast. And so my goal was to run with the 3:45 pace group for at least the first half And then halfway into 13 miles or so in, kind of see how I felt. And then if I felt good, speed up, but never speed up before then. 13 miles in, I'm doing great. So we're running like 8.5 minutes a mile, feeling great, chatting, shooting the breeze. I'm like, I am on top of the world, and off I go. And I speed up a little bit, not too bad. And I keep that up for another 7 miles. So mile 20, I'm coming into mile 20, still doing 8.5 minutes a mile, still feeling great. And then I hit the proverbial wall, and it was horrible. Like I legitimately thought about just walking off, just calling my wife and saying, pick me up, get me out of here. I hate everybody. I hate all of this. So I ran 20 miles at 8.5 minutes a mile, and then it all went to heck on me. One of my miles was 10.5 minutes. One of my miles was 11.5 minutes. I mean, it just boom, well, off the cliff. So as I'm coming in, I've got like 2 miles left, and I hurt everywhere. I'm cramping. I can't breathe. It's really bad. And I remember thinking, when I cross the finish line, if I don't collapse, I have just a little bit of energy left in me. I need to be very efficient with what I talk to my wife about. So I'm like, I'm practicing the phrase in my head: Gatorade and massage tent. Gatorade and massage tent. So of course I come across the finish line, and you get over there, and I'm like hanging on a trash can because I don't want to collapse, and I tell her that. So they take me over to the tent, and it was a little chilly that morning, and I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to the cold. You can attest to that. So I get over to the massage tent, I start drinking some stuff, and I'm like, hey, I need a massage. My legs are cramping up really bad. And they say, okay, there's a wait of about 30 minutes. And I'm like, man, I don't want to sit out in the cold for 30 minutes, but man. So I sit down, and I'm sitting on a rock, and I'm kind of thinking, and everything starts getting a little fuzzy, a little wobbly. And one of the paramedics comes over. If you're listening to this with children in the room, earmuffs. So I'm sitting there, and I got my head in my hands, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm cold, and one of the paramedics comes over, and he goes, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine. And he kind of laughs. He's like, fine my ass. He's like, stand up for me. So I stand up, my legs are cramping, I'm a little wobbly, and he's like, all right, in the tent with you, buddy. So they're trying to get me hydrated. They're trying to get the thing. But now it felt like maybe mild, I'm exaggerating, but like mild hypothermia, like I'm shivering and I can't stop shivering, and you can't massage somebody's muscles while they're shivering. And so the guy's like, yeah, you need to go to the hospital. You got some stuff wrong with you. They're really, I'm a dude in my 40s. I just ran 26 miles. They're very cautious about that kind of stuff. So they're like, you're out of here. So I went to the emergency room, got a couple of bags of saline, got out of my cold clothes, got some warm clothes on. Fun time there. So
let me get this right. You paid someone money and practiced so that you could run so much that you had to go to the hospital.
Yeah. And what's going to be even tougher for you to understand is I'm probably going to do it again. Like I'm going to have to do it and do it better is the thing. Yeah.
And if I recall, this is not your first trip to need medical attention after running.
Have I needed it after running before? I needed it after a martial arts workout once.
Yeah, I know that story, but I was thinking that one of these other races you ran, post-race, Jill was threatening to drag you to the hospital.
She's threatened a couple of times. Yeah, so earlier this year I ran a half marathon and didn't eat well before it, and yeah.
Yeah. See, I pay attention to these stories of Todd's suffering.
Yeah. Well, they light up your eyes in a way that I just don't get to see.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, do we need to talk about the definition of insanity, or are we not ready? Are we not there yet?
One or two more episodes, maybe.
Okay, because Joe and I are starting an intervention group at some point.
Yeah. So then the funny thing, so my wife and kids were down there supporting me and all that, and once the emergency room kicks in, Jill's got to get rid of the kids because they're bored, they're hungry, and all that stuff. So I've got a cousin that lives in town there. He comes down, picks my kids up, entertains them. So we're all done at the hospital. I'm fine. I was always fine. It was all good. It was much ado about nothing. We get in her car and we take off to pick up the kids, and we're laughing and telling stories, and we're going down this like boulevard road, probably 50 mile an hour. And through no fault of hers, she hits a curb. And she hits a curb at 50 mile an hour, and I thought like the world had ended. I mean, it was just banging. So we blew a tire in a very spectacular fashion. Like, I'm surprised they didn't cost us the rim or the half axle or whatever up there. So I'm like, you're just gonna only laugh, right? And I'm like, oh, well, you get changed tire. That's how that works. So we get out, we start tearing everything out of the car, getting the spare out, getting the jack out, and the instructions and all that. I start loosening lug nuts, and I realize that we have a security lug nut on her rim. So it's got the little fancy thing you can't. We don't have the adapter for it. And so that whole ordeal was very long. I'm not going to make everybody listen to that, but that whole ordeal took about 3 hours to resolve to get that tire changed. And when it all came down to it, I crossed the finish line for that race at like 11:59 a.m. I didn't set foot in my house until 8 o'clock that night, and that race was 40 miles in that direction. It was just down the road, and yeah, it was one of those days.
So the security lock on the Honda, we haven't talked about this one all. Was this like a feature that the dealer provided? Is this something you'd put on? Who put this thing on and did not say this fancy key that goes with it is not? We're not going to save that thing.
Well, let's be clear. It is Jill and I's fault that adapter was not in the car. I mean,
Okay.
I knew it was there. I knew I've not changed a tire literally in like 20 years. I can think of the last time I changed a tire. It was 2000. It was December of 2000. So, I mean, I just don't think of spare tires as something to worry about. So the Odyssey that we have has nicer rims. I mean, it's a minivan, but it's got nicer rims. And what the dealer did is the van came with regular lug nuts. They got the Honda, aftermarket security lug nuts, put those on the 4 tires, and then gave us the blister pack that had, put the regular lug nuts in and then had the tool. We've had that for 5 years since we got the minivan. I threw it in a drawer in the garage, never thought about it. I knew exactly where it was. And so part of this thing was we couldn't get the thing off, and Honda obviously doesn't just sell those keys because then the bad guys would just buy them and steal the nice rims. So there's a variety of ways to handle it, but on a Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock in Des Moines, Iowa, there's just not a lot of options. And so trying to figure out how to get that. So at one point I called a buddy of mine in Ames and I'm like, if you're not doing anything, will you go to my house and go to my garage and go into this drawer and get this thing and be on call? You may have to drive down to Des Moines so we can change this tire. So, yeah, so it was the dealer that put them on. We didn't ask for it, but I knew they were there. It's not their fault. It's our fault.
Well, they want to make, probably charge you $200 for those chrome key.
Yeah.
That's a topic for another day. But when dealers put things on vehicles that no one wants and then charges you for them because it's on there, it really won't like pet peeves.
Crazy. So, but the good news was I got home in time to watch the football game, the Sunday night football game. And remind me who played Sunday night. Remind me.
I don't know. I've mostly sworn off the NFL at this point. I'm sick of terrible officiating, so I'm getting real close to just stopping watching football.
Yeah, but you did watch this game because I remember seeing you complaining about the officiating.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I think that was the Kansas City Chiefs played some bungling team.
Some B team. Yeah, so my Chiefs, they played the Cincinnati Bengals, a team, if I remember right, you used to have season tickets to. Didn't you and I go to a game at one point 10 years ago?
Yeah, you wore this big, hideous, puffy jacket with Kansas City Chief logos all over it.
Yep. So I did get to watch that game, and Sunday was fuzzy. I had a bad day. Do you remember what the score was? How did that game turn out?
I literally don't. I stopped watching in the first quarter. I was done.
Well, that's really all you needed to see because the Chiefs destroyed the Bengals. It was 45-10, I believe, at the end.
Nice. Yeah, I literally didn't know what the score was. I didn't even bother looking.
Yep, it was
45-10. Good job, Bengals.
So yeah, I had that night and just did not want to go to bed because I wanted to see how that game ended up.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of fun to watch, I guess, when your team is running up the score on the hapless Bengals.
Well, I bring that up with you because you and I have talked at length about, the Chiefs quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and how I don't like him and how I've never liked him and I didn't want to like him. Man, is he making it tough for me not to like him. I mean, he is.
Yeah, he's dude's got a little of that gusto, a little make this thing happen, throw the ball. Right now, I thought it was kind of neat. So before I stopped watching, they were doing they did a piece on the 17 different arm angles, and yeah. I've always appreciated that. Right, Matthew Stafford's another big guy who can throw the ball from 17 different places, and it's just kind of neat to see when the guys aren't the Tom Brady, right, who has to have 3 steps, no one in front of him, and then his perfect mechanics are perfect, But for the love of God, if he can't have
Yep.
all of the things perfect, it's going to poop. So
The Tom Brady waist twist thing that he does. I mean, yeah, physics, from a laws of physics thing, it is just a thing of beauty to watch. But you're right, if it doesn't line up exactly. Yeah, Mahomes, I think it was 2 weeks ago. It was some scramble he was on, and he could have thrown with his right hand, but he switched the ball to his left hand and just kind of tossed it as if just to say, it's too easy if I throw with my right. I have to do this left-handed because if I do it right-handed, it's just not a challenge. So yeah, it's tough. Okay, so how was your weekend? I know that I had a rough weekend, but did anything happen with you?
So I went to lots of kids soccer. That's how we roll.
Yep.
But other than that, we had a modern day miracle happen.
Do tell.
Yeah, and as you talked about in the pre-production meeting, that's right, we have pre-production meetings, people.
We plan this, folks. This is not, yeah.
Something that is just going to basically reinforces bad behavior that Todd and I have already do happened. So I think you guys probably all remember, if you've listened to last week's episode, that went on a pretty good tirade on how evil Sling was and how I was going to extract my revenge. So I called up my buddy Dr. Evil and I called up Cobra Commander, right? And we were working like a 10-step.
Destro.
Yeah, we were going to try and get Destro, but he was always a mercenary, really, so he kind of cost money. He's like Zoltan, right? He was only like a bounty hunter, did things for money. Wow, that was some super nerdy G.I. Joe information.
Yep.
But, so, out of the blue, and I'd sent Sling a lot of hate mail, telling them that I was lining up my things. I was like, I'm going to spend, my goal was to spend the $600 again on like ads, and I mean, I was going to literally like spend money to make sure that people did not sign up for their service. That was where I was at, because I'm a very vengeful person.
You were scorned, yes.
Out of the blue, they're like, oh, hey, we just saw your email. Liar. Supervisor just saw my email is what it is. Sorry about all the confusion. Give us a day. Okay. Next day, your refund is processing.
What? My what is what?
And they even put the amount. They're like, here, in the whole, like, 580, like, they went from not even acknowledging that I was complaining to, oh, yeah, whatever, to, oh, yeah, here it is. Here's all your money. No more questions asked. No, like, but never, I never got the middle. I never got the back and forth middle part, right? It was just like the stages without the processes to get through the stages. It was really weird.
Yeah. Our what I'm hearing of this is our nerd army worked out for us. The people on Twitter that were retweeting and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Like Eric says in the chat room, social media for the win. I think that's what did it.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely was, right? Because when we were emailing back and forth, they could care less. I hit the social media team who was starting to DM with me, and they couldn't do anything, but clearly somewhere behind the scenes, they poked the right bear, and just like that. So kudos to Sling for, after lots of pushing, prodding, and threatening, for doing the right thing. So maybe they're not on the completely evil list anymore, but still a little miffed.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that. Yeah, and that's that's been the way to do things for a while now, and like you said, it just confirms our bad behavior is the way to go.
Yeah. But I think that's one of those unfair advantages that, us being tech nerds and having how long have we been on Twitter? I don't even know.
10 years, a long time.
Yeah, but accumulating followers, right? Unfortunately, the way the algorithms work is they're like, who's the person with the most followers that is complaining, and that's how most of these companies process the online interactions. And we've been fortunate enough over the years, for no good reason, acquiring a lot of followers. So we appreciate it, because you guys give us powers to complain about things that have nothing to do with what we do.
Yep, and some of you guys did retweet it, and we appreciate it. So now we're upgrading Sling from a spawn of the devil to mildly evil, maybe.
Yeah, and so I think I'd say maybe proceed with caution. So just make sure that, because I fully appreciate in some markets they're probably the best option, and at the end of the day, that's what you should care about the most, right? Is what is the best option for getting you the channels that you want and need. And if they're the best option for you, go do the trial. Just if you decide not to go forward, delete your credit card information from them, I think, is probably the moral of the story.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit later in the podcast about cord cutting, so we'll hit some of that stuff. If things seem like they're not running as smoothly as normal, like the fact that we're half an hour in and we haven't talked about a single technical thing yet, it's because Lori's gone this week. So that's when everything just goes to haywire. So we can't wait till next week till Lori gets back. But you had a complaint about Lori. Would you like to tell us what's grinding your gears this week?
Yes, I would. So I don't know if you guys know, but Lori's a traitor. She was on Mark Cashman's what is this, SharePoint Intranet Zone or something like that. I forget the name of his podcast.
I'm looking it up right now.
Mark and Chris interviewed Lori, and she just hopped all in, all nimbly bimbly, and was like, "Oh yeah, you can interview me." And it took Todd and I hundreds of episodes to beg and plead to get Lori on, and she's done it a couple times, so we got to give her that credit. But we had to beg, borrow, and steal. And Mark's like, "Hey, Lori, you want to come on?" And Lori's like, "Oh yeah."
I thought you'd never ask.
I'm just pretty miffed with Lori right now. And then she doesn't even show up. I mean, she's probably probably gonna tell us to call her people. She probably wants a bigger fee for her executive producer role. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, clearly she's outgrown us. Yeah. So Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty do a podcast that's called The Intranet Zone, and join that one. Those are great guys. And so Mark Cashman's saying that they called me out a couple of weeks ago. I hope for something good. Oh, the dev. I'll have to go back and listen to that one. Holy cow. So so she's been on that. I don't think that one's been announced yet, but clearly she has outgrown us and she's gone. We've always known she could find somebody better than us. It was just a matter of time.
Yeah. So we're probably hiring for new producers. So if you've ever wanted to do a lot of work and get ridiculed and get no pay, that is might be a position we need soon.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Right. So finally, one technical top. Well, that was kind of technical. We told people about a podcast about SharePoint. So
there we go. Yeah,
but do number C, because I think that'll get us back in focus, maybe.
Yeah. So something we've known about for a while. SharePoint 2019 is coming out, but now it's out. So we've known for a while SharePoint 2019 was coming. They've said October, and this week it actually RTM'd. So for those of us that are still old school, running SharePoint servers on premises even, we got some new bits this week.
What, have you installed the bits?
I have not installed the RTM bits. I can't say what I have installed, but I have played with it a little bit, and I've seen the stuff at the SharePoint conference and all that. We've talked about this a little in the past, but a bit of a recap. SharePoint Server on-prem is now a fork of SharePoint Online. So essentially, at some point in the past, Microsoft looked at SharePoint Online, copied the code over, and said, how much of this do we want to try to make work on-prem, and then what does that look like? And so what SharePoint 2019 is now is basically a subset of SharePoint Online features from a year ago or wherever they forked the code. And forking the code sounds way dirtier than it really is. But basically, it's this upgrade to SharePoint from 2016 is about user experiences, is about the end user stuff. So we're getting things like modern sites and modern lists and modern libraries and communication sites and those kind of things. And the ability, one of my favorites, OneDrive for Business, that sync client will now work with everything on SharePoint Server, whereas before you had to use the old crappy Groove one. They've increased the number of files and types of files that you can upload to match kind of what SharePoint Online does. So now the maximum upload size is 15 gigabytes. Woo. You can have long file names and things like that. Yep.
That's crazy, right? So I don't know. I mean, should you and I be sitting in a room somewhere making a deck to upgrading, SharePoint 16 to 19? I mean, we've done every other SharePoint upgrade talk in the history of mankind.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching that class in Omaha on Friday, and migration was part of that. And I had some stuff from it, but now I've got to revisit it and see what it looks like and make sure that I'm talking about it. But I think the last time you and I did the migration talk, it was, or at least the last time I did it, I don't remember if you were there or not, but it was as much about migrating to from one version of on-prem to the next version to on-prem to the cloud. So it's all very, yes, the talk has changed.
Man, I don't know when I'll ever have time, but I would love to put a SharePoint 2019 VM out there. I want to just kind of click my way through the sites and the UI and start to wrap my head around. Because I think that's going to be, you know, as I think we've talked about in previous shows, right? The infrastructure-wise, the things that, you know, nerds like you and I used to do, really not a lot of change from 16 to 19.
Nope.
But it's the front end. And so when you think about migrations now from 16 to 19, you got to go really put all your brain power around how the front end's going to change, how your users are going to adapt to that. And you know, and it wasn't the whole fact that on-prem didn't have modern sites the reason that like half the people are sticking with on-prem. So I'm still weirded out by this whole 19 on-prem story and where this is really going to end.
Yeah. Well, when I get my server up, I will give you access to it, and you can poke around to your heart's content. Answer all of those questions and more. But Microsoft's got a bunch of things out there. I, of course, being an intrepid blogger, blogged about it. And you can go to toddclint.com/SP2019 is here, which I found out when I set that up. I had already used that short URL for another blog post, so I had to redirect it. I had to reset it up. But there's some links there on how to download it, the blog post in the SharePoint team, and then I will follow every other blogger in the blogosphere and start blogging my install things. I've got a class that I'm teaching Friday and then one that I'm teaching on Monday and Tuesday, so it'll be next week before I can really get into it and do much with it.
So does this mean we're also going to see a new spawn of the SharePoint 2019 builds list?
Yeah, so I've got that out there. I don't remember where that's at, if I've got this things, but yes, I'm absolutely going to follow that. I've got the pages and stuff built up. I need to get that going as well. Yep.
Man, that's whew, this is crazy. I mean, SharePoint 2019.
Yep. And again, I like to mention that I currently have a customer with a production SharePoint 2003 server. I have been logged in to a SharePoint 2003 server in the last 7 days. Production.
I know of several. I have not logged into one, though. You've logged into one more recently than I have.
Yep. 2003. That software is 16 years old.
Yeah.
Production.
And I still struggle with that, you know, because the buttons move from the left to the right to the left. I'm mostly like an idiot now. If I try to show someone where something is inside of SharePoint, I'm like, I don't know. I know the name of the button. I know what I want to do. And it's on this screen somewhere.
Somewhere. It's out
God
there.
help me if I can find it.
Yep. It's...
And, you know, we've had a couple of customers recently that have, you know, popped up one, like, real SharePoint help. So, like, I've had to get back into group sites and communication sites and that stuff. And it's just... I don't know if I like it anymore. It's like... It's so awkward now. I don't know, and I feel like it changes every 37 seconds. And
oh, it does, yeah. Hub sites are a good improvement, though. I'm a fan of hub sites. I kind of was resisted them a little bit, but they scratch a lot of itches. I like them.
But to use a hub site, you have to have a modern site, right? To be a consumer of the hub site, a child of the hub site, you have to be a modern site, I think.
I believe that's true, yeah.
And so, like, my customers who are trying to massage their environments, you know, we had originally intended on keeping some of the old sites and then just moving to the new sites where we needed to kind of do new things.
Yeah.
But then we got this hub site idea and we got all excited, but then we realized that meant that all the things that we wanted to keep have now got to get redone just to get them from old to new. And
yeah, and so that's a valid fear. And one thing that's interesting for me is I'm doing 2 or 3 big migrations to Office 365 right now, and all of those customers are new Office 365 customers. So they didn't have a footprint in Office 365 a year ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
So all of their new stuff is modern, and they have a very strong preference for that. Like, they don't want any of the old stuff sitting around. So all the things like hub sites and all that, there's nothing to migrate out of. They jumped in at just the right time. Now, whenever the next thing comes out, we'll see how that works. But I've been lucky in that regard.
Yeah. Well, and part of the problem too, though, is right. So it really kind of or not really. I mean, basically, you create group sites for everything now, right? You go the home thing, and then people are like, I don't want these group sites. I'm like, well, tough. You just have to accept them. I don't know what I've given up on even trying to deal with that.
You cannot use groups, but I caution people strongly against it.
Yeah, exactly. I've just taken to, just accept it. Shut up. You have a group site.
Yep. Yep. And for most of our customers, so most of them, it's tough for them to understand the value of it if they're not using anything besides SharePoint, because they don't care that they get a team. They don't care that they get a this and a that. And I'm like, well, you don't now. I get that. But a year from now, you might. 2 years from now, you might. And having that structure and not have to go and groupify one later on and jiggle everything's in your best interests.
Yeah, and then I'm still convinced, right, that really we should not be talking about any of this. We should be talking about Teams and just using it to surface SharePoint content. That's what they really want us to do.
They do want that a whole lot, yeah. Yep.
But and so I've been on a rash. I've been added to like 17 teams in the last week, and now the Teams client is freaked out over like one of them it can't add me to, so it keeps like looping, and I can't get out of the loop and. I don't know. I understand I need to accept Teams and start to like learn about it, but Teams is still a little raw for me, and I just.
Yep, I installed the Teams client on my phone last night as part of this training thing, and did not shut the notifications off. So one of the teams I'm on has been blowing up this morning. So if you've heard my phone going crazy, it's because of that. So, and I was surprised. I was part of this. The training I was doing was showing all the different phone apps that Microsoft has. Holy crap! Yeah, I mean, for Office 365 stuff. So I'm not even talking about other crazy stuff, but there's probably 20 or 30 of them. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, and some of them are really spectacular, right? Like I don't know which ones you've messed with recently, but for example, the Flow one is probably the best one that I know of from the amount of things that you can do inside of there in the different ways. But literally, like, no one ever has downloaded the Flow app. I mean, somebody told me they looked the other day and was like had like 118,000 downloads. I'm like, that's missing 2 zeros in my book. I mean, it is a spectacular app for all these things that they now make it so you just do right there on the mobile phone, but people aren't getting used to this idea of going to the App Store to look for Microsoft apps. So I don't know, which one did you dig into?
I mean, Teams was the one that I installed, but I was basically, for this training that I'm doing on Friday, was telling that story and just saying, listen, as you're migrating to Office 365, don't forget about the mobile apps. And here is a short list of the mobile apps that are out there. And I was just updating because I had that slide already. I was just making sure that it was up to date. I'm like, my God, there's just no end to this list of apps. Planner and Staff Hub and Teams and Flow and Power Apps and Power BI. I added that one. Yep.
Yeah. We have a guest in the audience today, right? Jason is hanging out with us, and he is our Power BI guru, expert, aficionado, and.
Yeah, I talked to Jason yesterday, and I mentioned the podcast, and we hadn't seen his smiling face here. We missed him. It's not the same without him, and so we get him for the week.
Yeah. Well, and I'll let you do it. So we didn't say Jason who, and so the reason is every time I say his last name, like with the word orange and poem, I say it wrong. Mm-hmm. So I've just stopped saying Jason's last name. I refuse to say it because no matter my silly Georgia upbringing of how to use words, cannot say his last name, so I don't want to get yelled at by Jason for it. So it's just Jason. You hear me say Jason? It's just
you can go to SharePointLonghorn.com. Can you say SharePointLonghorn.com?
Yes, I can say SharePoint Longhorn.
There you go. So that's Jason's website. So yes, Jason Himmelstein is the Jason.
Yeah. See, if I say it, it'll come out like.
Yep. So. And I think it's German for Skystone, if I remember.
Nope, not doing it, people. Now everybody's giving me like hints. I know Jason's name. I've known Jason for 15 years. Yeah. Just the word doesn't come out of my mouth right, so it's now on my list of words I won't use. Like Orange and Poem. That might be the show title. So not to be outdone, a bunch of things, and there's even one that I haven't mentioned this week. The last 7 days, so many new things have come out. So SharePoint 2019 is out, ready to go. Put it in production. Go forth and click next. SPDocKit, our fine friends there. We didn't mention them at the beginning, but they are these folks the SysKit folks. I can't even point at it correctly here. They came out with a new version of SPDocKit, version 8.0. That came out in the last week. Why should we care about that? First off, it fully supports everything in SharePoint 2019. So you don't have to worry about that. You can get that installed right away. And they've just added more things, more reports, more auditing, more security, all that. And if you've ever touched SPDocKit, you know that as an admin, it is
there's no topping it. And so I'm very excited to see that. If you're a consultant like Shane and I, they have a consultant version, so you can install it, use your license on a customer's farm, generate a report for them. It is really good stuff. So go to SPDocKit.com or syskit.com. Check that out. They've got a free 30-day trial. I will warn you, though. I want to be honest about this. If you download the 30-day trial of SPDocKit, you will buy it. I mean, you will fall in love with it in far fewer than 30 days, and you will not be able to imagine your life without it. So go out and grab that. But it's the best tool for any kind of documentation.
I would like a gold star for the amount of effort this took, but I didn't want to interrupt your promo time with making fun of you, but now that you're done, I don't know why you people don't watch this show, right? I know that thousands of you listen to it every week, and you're like, I'm in my car driving, I can't watch. But the shenanigans, the awkward things, like watching Todd try to point like this, or seeing how bad my hair looks today, there's a lot of value in watching this show.
The feeling of superiority our watchers must have is just enormous, just immense.
Yeah, but I mean, literally, you missed him for like 15 seconds doing like he was like taking one arm and using it to move the other one. Like it's over. No, gosh, it was hilarious. I kept quiet for the whole thing. So
you're biting your lip, biting your tongue. Yeah, so they're the SysKit folks, and they've got all kinds of other great tools out there for Office 365 and for servers. Some are free, some are not, but there's a whole bunch of great stuff. So thanks to them. So that was a new, and then one I didn't put in the notes, an almost equally invaluable piece of software. A new version of Snagit came out here in the last week too, from TechSmith.
Oh, I knew that, but I have not downloaded that yet.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that because now Shane's gonna stop broadcasting and go download
it right now.
Snagit. Yeah, so Snagit 2019 is out now. Mark Anderson and I were chatting on Twitter back and forth this morning about this, and Snagit is absolutely one of the first things I install on a new build of any PC. Like I install, I get the updates. I've got a piece of PowerShell that downloads Chrome, so I don't have to use Edge to do it. I get Edge installed, or I get Chrome installed, and then Snagit. I mean, it is just that. And so a new version of that is out. I just installed it like an hour ago. Thought about calling in sick to the podcast so I could play with it some, but decided not to.
I thought about calling in sick in the podcast too.
Yep. So techsmith.com is the folks. So SysKit, they're an actual sponsor. I do some work for them. That was a paid thing, but I've been talking about them for years. TechSmith is not a sponsor. We just gush about them because we love them, because it's just that good. And so Jason is asking if there's an update to Camtasia as well. I don't think there is. I think Camtasia 2018 is still the latest version.
Yeah, I was in Camtasia like 2 days ago and I didn't get any updates.
Yeah.
Man, there's like so much to talk about. I want to talk about a bunch of other stuff, but I will stay focused. Oh.
Okay, so this is a quick one. OneDrive is one of the things that I love. And with the October update for Windows 10, if you were able to get it before they pulled it, and if it didn't delete all of your files when you got it, and you still got it on there, one of the updates is OneDrive is going to have a feature now where it will remove synced files after a certain number of days. So with OneDrive, you've got the placeholders where you just see things and then you click them and it downloads them, but you can force things to stay downloaded. One of the options that's showing up now with the OneDrive client and the Windows 10 October update is the ability to say, if I haven't touched a OneDrive file in 30 days, go ahead and take it back offline. It'll still show up as a placeholder, but it won't take up any space locally.
I've had to teach a couple people how to use the OneDrive client. So as much as I try to ignore you during these segments, through no desire of my own, a lot of it is sunk in, and I've actually started helping people sort through this, and it makes me sad. I mean, it makes me happy I help people, but it makes me sad that I know that you're responsible for my knowledge there. So
it's a great project. One thing and I tripped up on it last night because of something, is if you're using it with Office 365, because you can also use it for personal. If you're using it with Office 365, do not put a comma in the display name of your tenant. So my display name used to be Todd Clint Consulting, LLC, I think, which everything looks fine and syncs fine. But when you sync a SharePoint Online document library, it shows up in Explorer as the name of your tenant. So it's got that comma in there, which is usually fine. But there are some applications that when you try to open up a file in that folder, it can't because of the comma. So I had to go into Office 365 and take the comma out of my tenant's name, which worked fine. But then any OneDrive connections that I'd made before I did that kept the comma. So I had to go unlink the account, resync the document libraries, and then it worked fine.
I have a comma. Where's this advice 3 years ago?
Well, if you haven't hit it yet, you're probably okay. But it's only certain applications, and I think Snagit Editor was one of them that did it. But yeah, you double click on it, OneDrive's like, hey, no problem, I'll get the file. It shows you getting the file, and then the application comes up and says, I can't find that file. And it's because of that comma.
All right, so
Jason in the chat room is asking which version of the Sync client that is, like all of them for the last year. Like it happened to me last night. That's why I'm talking about it. So.
Because you go to weird tools, weird websites, weird commas.
This is all true, yeah.
So speaking of apps, so I made one for, Todd, you can't see it, but they'll be able to see it. I made one for Halloween that I'm about to do a video on. It is Shane's Spooky Halloween Candy Tracker. And the reason I bring this up is because you reminded me that the reason I opened Camtasia the other day was I needed a scary sound effect. And I didn't want to pay for one. So I recorded myself doing a bunch of sound effects until I found one. And so let's see if this will play loud enough that you can hear it. You hear that?
A little bit. What was it?
Let's try this again.
What is it? A cat being tortured? What?
It's that.
Okay.
So in the app, you can see the I made the little like paw print come down the screen. It's a spooky app. So when you press a button, it no value to actual human or to adults, but my children were cracking. They like sat there like for 5 minutes. So. Anyway, upcoming Power Apps video is how Shane made a spooky candy Halloween tracker, because it is almost Halloween.
Yeah, and speaking of annoying each other, I've talked for many months now about how my browsers, whenever I go to YouTube, it always puts that damn Shane Youngcloud at the end.
Yep.
So that got even worse the other night. I'm about ready to just give up on YouTube. So my kids wanted to watch some music videos. They like Leo, the guy from Norway that does the cover songs, the heavy metal covers, did Africa a few months ago. Great stuff. And so we're all sitting in the living room. I'm like, oh, no problem. He's done a new song. So I go to YouTube and I fire up the Leo song and I use the Chromecast, cast it out to the TV. Everything's great. We're watching Leo. And the way he does his things is he does the song and then he does like closing credits. So he writes a little ditty and he talks about how you can support him on Patreon and all that kind of stuff. And I casted it out and then I was, cruising the news or whatever. And YouTube automatically just grabbed something else in my list to watch. And it was one of your videos on my TV ruining my kids' minds. Oh.
Hopefully it showed an ad. Hopefully you clicked on the ad.
I don't think I can do that on the TV.
Which reminds me, I need to send you a screenshot of. There's been some newer milestones.
So that was one of the things. Jill's like, oh wow, that video's got like 3,000 views. He must be doing well. I'm like, woman, stop talking. I don't even want to talk about it. I stomped out of the room angrily. It was yeah.
Oh, my YouTube channel. God bless it.
Hate me some YouTube. You want to talk about F?
Oh, I closed that. There was something else I wanted to talk about. And I forgot and all that. Oh yeah. So, good old AppRiver, folks. I don't know if you guys have heard us talk about this, but you need to go to toddquit.com/AppRiver and check it out, right? If you are a reseller of Office 365, or you want to be, right? I know a lot of you are consultants. I know a lot of your companies are out there. You're going to get customers to buy Office 365. Resell that thing. Get yourself some money off those users. And in order to do that, you need to go through AppRiver. They'll help you get set up, onboarded. Then there you're back, right? There you're heavy. They provide all the supports, all the controls. They add a security stuff. They give you sales tools to make it easier for you to show why you should be providing Office 365 and you should be the one helping them with their messed up, unsecure environment. So definitely one of those people we want you to go check out. toddclint.com/AppRiver.
Yep.
Hopefully next week, I think we're going to have one of their security experts on the show in some capacity. I don't know if we're going to have to splice it in or have them on live or just not have Todd next week. I don't know. One of those things will happen. So.
Yeah. And so AppRiver, again, and we've talked about this before, they've been around forever. These people know SharePoint. They've just been doing it forever. And they bring a lot of stuff. So it's good for you as a reseller because you get a little spiff on it. It's good for your customers because they get a better security experience. it's really good for everybody except for the bad guys. They're really the only ones that suffer if you don't get or if you do get AppRiver. So I think we all agree down with the bad guys and get you some AppRiver.
Yes, yes. And speaking of bad guys, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is not in the show notes, and we got like 5 minutes, so but whatever. I'm adding
Yeah.
something. So my wife is the president of my kids' PTO, and they were targeted by some bad guys who sent a forged email from one person to another person, like asking to transfer some money and stuff. It was like a pretty sophisticated little attack. I was like, this is so. I don't know. I'm still waiting to kind of see how it all shuffles out. You know, is this something like? Did they go after them specifically, or is this like some like niche targeting that they've come up with? But it was really kind of fascinating to see. So I don't know.
So I can tell you that scam's been around. I have known other entities that have gotten targeted by that a couple of years ago. I don't want to go into a lot of details, but yes, once, and I would be curious, I'll talk to you offline, but yes, I think the Nicola's title figures into how that scam works because I've seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I was impressed with like
Yep.
what they did. Even more impressed that all the people on the good guys team that were involved knew that it was a little fishy and didn't do anything. So that was even better.
Excellent. So we talked about that. So we talked about cord cutting earlier, and I wanted to mention another article that I saw. Apparently, Apple, it might be coming out with their own TV service, more of a Netflix, Amazon Prime sort of TV service, not so much a Sling, YouTube TV, PlayStation View kind of thing. And that figures in. I ran into a buddy of mine at the store this weekend, and we just happened to be, it was that thing where we were at the store and both of our wives were shopping for stuff we didn't care about, and we just sort of gravitated toward the electronics section. I'm like, hey, it's very in our, it was, but he was looking at TVs and all that, and he was saying, he's like, oh, I've really been thinking about getting rid of DirecTV, but I don't know. And I'm like, do it. I did it like 2 years ago. It's been great. So I talked to him a little bit about that on Saturday, and then he texted me yesterday and said, yep, he got his Rokus and his Amazon Fire set up. He's loving it. We kind of talked through some of the tweaks on which service to get and all that. And so this is just another one of those things. Apple's coming out with their version. We talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about how Sling might be the best service. One of the pieces of advice that I gave him, and I was talking to Mike Fitzmaurice a couple weeks ago about this, is one of the things with cord cutting is it's very much in motion. So I told my buddy, here's the things that you can look at. Here's what the best solution is today, but know that they're all iterating, and it might be a different solution 6 months from now. It might be a different service. It might be a different box. And so this is just another reason why you got to stay on top of that, because if you've got Apple equipment, this Apple TV service is probably going to be pretty good for you.
Yeah, and it's crazy, right? Because Disney's working on one too. I mean, it
Yeah.
would be. I'm sadly, I feel like we're at some point going to end up where the content's going to fragment so poorly that you end up like needing two, right? So you're going to be like, I have to have Netflix plus the Disney service to get all the things I want, or
Yeah. Yeah. Which is fine, but if you think about it, that's kind of what we've always wanted, because for people who don't want Disney, they don't have to pay for it. And Netflix isn't paying Disney on your behalf anyway, because, for Netflix to license Disney stuff, it costs, $40 bazillion a year. They're spreading that out across all their customers. So if Netflix can't do Disney anymore, so I think we're getting there. That's probably not all bad.
Yes, as long as the overlap's not too heavy, right? As long as it's not like, Netflix and Disney's service and Apple service all have the same bottom 50% of the content, right? So if I'm subscribed across all three, I'm paying for that bottom 50%, which might be a small number,
Yeah.
but still be paying for the, Goonies on all three versions. And so, I don't know, it'd be, like you said, it's always changing, and so I'm sure we're going to go through another evolution, but.
Yep. So Apple TV's in there. They've got a big footprint. So I'm curious how that will work out for them. One of the podcasts we always listen to is The Indicator, and I think either on The Indicator or Planet Money here recently, they had an episode on Netflix trying to get into India.
Yes.
That was an interesting one because of just the differences in markets. And as an American company, thinking like Americans, trying to come into another market is just different. And they're struggling, not because of ignorance, but just because of trying to get it all figured out.
Yeah, well, I thought the other interesting, so towards the end of that segment, right? It was like Bollywood.
Taking out Bollywood, or yep.
Yeah, but it sounds like the real advantage that the Indian version of Netflix has is they have the all the cricket licensing. Yep. So Netflix and Prime come in and they can't show cricket matches, and the local group is showing the cricket matches, and so that's for a lot of people that's just like game over. The decision is stopped right there. So yeah, I don't know how they're going to deal with things like that.
And I can't remember what the Indian service, Netflix type service was called. It had a great name and I forgot what it was. But yeah, so everybody's going to have that anyway because of cricket. So why would they pay the other $1 a month for Netflix or whatever? But that's the thing. I don't know how long. I probably stayed with DirecTV 2 or 3 years longer than I would have because of the NFL Sunday Ticket. I mean, it was just so that's where it's at.
Yep. All right, should we wrap this thing up? Or we?
Yeah, so we are way over. Do we want to kind of truncate some of this? We'll skip out on that.
All the things that happened this week we can skip, right? Because none of that's going to... So
yep,
A, B, and C and promotions and Community Corner, I think all that, because they won't make it out before it happens.
No. So why don't you jump down to D?
Yeah, so the next thing on the list, right? Number D, to make fun of me saying number C earlier. Number D is Power Apps and Flow training here in November. Good old Power Apps 911, that's me. I do it full Todd. This thing.
Way too accurate. That no one would.
I do it on all the videos, so practice. Anyway, we're running a Power Apps and Flow class, so I was working on the app we're going to build just this morning on. And we're going to do through the hands-on lab. So if you're into Power Apps and Flow, you want to take some online training, and really our target customer is either I've never done it before. There's a one-day class to help you kind of get that first up to speed on Power Apps and Flow. But then the 4-day class that goes after that, that one is for the people who have built Power Apps and Flows, but really don't know what they're doing, right? If you can admit that to yourself, like, hey, I muddled through, I've got an app out there and running, but man, I really wish why this function and formula that I used works. That's kind of the goal of this class, is to get in there and start to go from able to build something to understanding and seeing and building things in a more robust, scalable, future-proof type of way. So that's coming up. And then after that, Todd, you're going to go do something?
I'm going to go to Slovenia December 3rd, 4th, and 5th for the Thrive Conference. I'm doing an all-day session on the 3rd and then some other things. I forget which sessions on the 4th and the 5th. If you're in Europe, it's a great little conference. Very intimate. You get to it's a great conference. I've been there 2 or 3 times. I look forward to going back every time. And so that's thriveconf.com. And then after that, I'm going to spend a couple days in Zagreb with the SysKit folks, hanging out with them, seeing what they got going on. They got a new office. Can't wait to see it.
I hope they kidnap you and don't want you to come back. Oh, did I say it out loud? I'm sorry.
It'll only be because they love me and they don't want me to leave. And then, so Shane, talk about F a little bit.
So F, in March, I will be at the North American Collaboration Summit doing a session on Power Apps, like an all-day Power Apps and Flow session, and then followed up with a Power Apps and Azure SQL session. And I hear there's a nasty rumor that they decided to kind of take the show from top shelf only to kind of a little more of a low rent, a little more of a local thing. So, Todd, what do you want to add on here?
Well, so because of all of your whining about how I wasn't going to be there and how it's just not the same without me there and how you get lonely without me there and how you were in Phoenix last week and you just sat around and cried because I wasn't there, I talked to Mark Rackley and it looks like I'm going to go to the North American Collaboration Summit.
So what I'm hearing here, let's get this correct, is that I am such an important speaker to the success of the North American Collaboration Summit that they're like, man, Shane will do a better job and Shane will be happier if Todd is there. We don't believe that, but if that's a possibility, then it was worth their investment of bringing you on just to make sure that my performance was. Is that what I just heard?
That never came up in the discussion. I don't know if it was implied and I just did not infer it correctly. I don't remember that being the thing at all. But I mean, it's plausible that you do need me to boost you up and that if I'm not there, you just, I mean, I can see that. I can see him being worried about that.
All right. So there you go, folks. Come see us in Branson, Missouri, wherever that is. I'm not sure where that is either. Iowa,
And then
Branson.
we're talking. It's not in the notes, but SPTechCon in Austin is about that same time, and we're already looking at the 2019 conferences. It's
Oh,
already
the Omaha things in March also.
Yeah, is that official? Is
No,
that
no.
okay?
But,
All right. Well, that's yep.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yep. So we might have a couple of interesting things to announce next week. We'll see. I've got a couple of things under my hat as well that just are not ready for public discussion yet, but next week hopefully.
All right. Well, let's wrap this show up. You do your best not to run so much, have to go to the hospital anymore. And
it's just kind of fast. That's what it is. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. This was a long one. We will see you next week. Talk to you later.
Goodbye.